Well, welcome everyone to the February 26th Iowa City Bird Club meeting. I am so pleased tonight to be able to introduce James Pease, PhD. If you read the information that went out with the invite, you'll know what a phenomenal background he has. And I'm going to pass it to Jim right away and let him begin his presentation. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Sandy. And people should feel free, especially since we've got a really small group, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions at any time. It'll be fine. Um, this topic came about originally as a result of lots of trips to Costa Rica, Panama, Brazil, into the Amazon. And subsequently, since retirement, that was leading student groups, as you'll see in a minute. But since I retired from Iowa State in 2008, I've been leading a lot of international trips for older students, folks that are also retired, and a lot of those have been to those same countries, but in addition to Ecuador and Galapagos, Peru, Chile, all the way down to the tip of South America, and including uh, Africa, particularly Kenya, as well. So it's one of those things that people say, well, it seems obvious to many of us why we should care, but it's not always obvious. The program gives me a chance to show you a good bunch of bird pictures too, so it'll be kind of fun, I think. Here's my contact information. I'll put this back up later. That is my home phone, or excuse me, my cell phone, and that is my one of the things you get with Emeritus is the one thing they let you keep is your email as long as you're registered every year. So you can still contact me at that iastate.edu email. And that, by the way, is JLPs with an L in the middle. So why do we travel today? We travel for lots and lots of reasons. We want to see places that are new to us that we haven't seen before, to see them before they change and disappear. And my wife and I were just in Antarctica in part for that very reason. We went with Rhodes Scholar to Antarctica to see it before it disappears, before the snow and the ice disappears. So and certainly with climate change, we're seeing species extinctions all over the world. So it's good to go and try to see those. To experience new things in new places. I just gave a talk to a group of to a class at Iowa State this afternoon, talking about traveling, and I said if you approach a trip, an international trip in particular, with an open mind and an open palate, you'll never think the same way again. And I really think experiencing those new things, seeing it from a new light, you realize there's more than one way, more than one right way to live a life. There are lots of ways to live. To offer a help and service, there are many trips now that uh, where the travelers are actually engaged in volunteer activities in assistance. I just saw on the news tonight one where they're drilling wells in South Africa in poorer communities where they've never had access, and certainly to enrich our lives. And you can maybe think of others to think about why. This is just a few slides when I've taken students in the past. The one on the left is at the La Selva Biological Station in Costa Rica. The one in the upper right, the photo there, is actually a graduate student of mine, Susan Severa, who was working with students at a village in the Amazon in Brazil. The tombos, the bottom two pictures are from a trip we took with students to Panama, and we went up the Mogue River into the western Darien before the Darien became a place that nobody wants to go. It became much more dangerous to do so. But so this was a small Embera Indian village, and we were there for 3 days with them, learning about the culture and ecotourism in a village like that. Costa Rica is one place that I've been many, many times, and it's a great example, I think, of tropical biodiversity. It has amazing biodiversity. It has 12 different life zones, over 10,000, and that's just a wild guess. Over 10,000 known plant species and probably more. At least 900 bird species. I've only seen 700 of them, so I need to keep going back in order to see the other couple of hundred that I haven't seen yet. It has over 560 mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. It's just amazing. Lots and lots of fish as well. That's all in an area that's only about a third the size of Iowa. We're not a big state. Oh, Costa Rica is even smaller. So this amazing biodiversity is in a very small place. For comparison, Iowa had about 400 bird species, if you include all the ones that we see during migration, 70 mammals, 69 reptiles and amphibians, and on about four different habitat types. Instead of 12 life zones, we have about four. Um, so why the difference? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's like all real estate. It's location, location, location. And Costa Rica is topographically quite diverse. It goes from sea level to over 12, almost 14,000 feet on the top of one mountain. So they're in a very short distance. You can have this amazing altitudinal variation. And it is located as a land bridge between two major continents. So often they are the southernmost extent of North American species and then of some North American species and the northernmost extent of many South American species. So they have this amazing diversity in a very small place. The other thing that they have is that Costa Rica has somewhere, depending on whether you listen to their Chamber of Commerce or, other folks, somewhere between 12 and 24% of its land in some sort of public protection. It's not exactly the same. Most countries don't have the kind of national park system that we have here, but they do have lots of parks. They are often um, a different construction than we have our parks. Our parks are strictly national parks owned by the federal government. Our state parks are owned by state governments. In Costa Rica, there are often agreements with landowners. The federal government may not own some of them, but they have what essentially amounts to a conservation easement for a period of years. And some uses are still permitted for the private landowner. So it's not quite the same system, but at least it is a type of public protection. And it's that protection that brings a value to the public. Um, as long as they have tourism coming through, people using that land, it's going to be protected. There's no question about it at all. They see value in that. By comparison, Iowa has somewhere around 2% in public ownership, and that includes county, state, federal parks and refuges, and even includes city parks. So only 2%. We're next to the bottom, by the way. If you hear people saying, "Oh, we've got too much public land," you can say, "Well, we're next to the bottom in terms of the percent of our land that is in any kind of public ownership." We're definitely a private land state. So we've seen some spectacular critters, and we're going to show you. I'm going to show you a bunch of photos now of birds and things I've taken over the years. This happens to be a clear wing butterfly on a heliconia. Just an incredible critter. Jabiru storks. We'll start with some of the big ones. These guys are standing 4.5, 5 feet tall, and they have these spectacular nests. And like herons, you're looking at this nest kind of falling apart. you kind of wonder how long the little ones can stay in there before they they fall out. But the Jabiru storks are a big wetland species found in the wetlands in the north central part of and along the west coast of Costa Rica. Another water bird, bare-necked tiger herons, or several tiger herons. This is probably the most common. A little smaller than our great blues, but that striping on them makes the tiger heron gives them the tiger heron. They stalk the same way our herons do, very slowly through the water and stab at fish and frogs below. One of the most beautiful herons in the world, I think, is the Agami heron, and we've been fortunate enough to see them in several places all through the tropics, not just in Costa Rica but elsewhere. This one happens to be in Costa Rica, and it's they're really spectacular when they're in that blooming the breeding plumage. They are truly a spectacular heron. Another one that is hard to believe that is a heron. This is very much a night dweller, sleeps all during the day. Boat-billed herons. You look at that bill, and it really is about as wide as your hand is. Not a long straight bill like other herons, but it uses it the same way and hunts at night. Very much a nocturnal. And some of the shorebirds, jacanas. These guys have got toes. This is a bird about the size, a little smaller than a pigeon, maybe, and has toes. They're each about 3 inches long, and they're made for walking on tops of aquatic plants and mud flats, and quite spectacular. Gray-necked wood rails. Wood rails are another special species. This one, I think, is eating some amphibian eggs here in that gel that it's pulling up. They make quite a racket early in the mornings, and often you'll be awakened by gray-neck wood rails as they call throughout the woodlands or along the rivers. This is a very strange bird. If you've ever seen thick-knees, these are a shorebird, but they nest in the dry tropics in the grasslands, very often very far from water. You can see they're about a foot or 15 inches, 14 inches high, and they very. I think they should be called thick heads because they have such wide heads for getting down through the grasslands. But I guess they do have thick knees, but the heads seem to be thicker to me. Anyway, they're really a beautiful little shorebird, long-legged shorebird. Another long-legged one, and we have lots of different kinds of stilts all throughout the world. And in Costa Rica and very much of the tropics, the black-necked stilts are quite common, and they you're often seeing them in these groups, much like our we'll see groups of family groups of killdeers on river edge beaches in the late summer and early fall. These guys do the same sort of thing. They group up in these family groups before they migrate. Among the other birds, magnificent frigate bird. Um, let's see if I can get. Are you seeing that meeting progress is being or meeting is being recorded? Are you seeing that at the top of each picture? No? Okay, good. All right. The magnificent frigate birds. You may have. These are the ones you see along the shorelines and all throughout the tropics, and actually sometimes along our Gulf coast we'll see them, of course. And they spend a lot of time in the air. They have very swept back wings. The male is on the left here, and they'll use that puffy throat, bright red throat in attracting females during the breeding season. They're colonial nesters, so you'll often find sometimes in the Galapagos you see them on islands. In let's see, in Belize we've seen them in on tropical islands, nesting in trees. So they're pretty adaptable critter, and depending on where they're located. One of the ground nesting birds that's a turkey-sized bird and acts very much like our wild turkeys is the great curassow. Um, the male is the one in the front there with that sort of fancy hairdo and bright orangey yellow beak. And the female is the one in the background who's also quite colorful in this photo. You can see there's sort of a rusty red with a bright striped trail, very turkey-like trail, as you can see from both of the tails there on the females. Great curassows spend a lot of time going through the underbrush. If you're quiet in the woods in the tropics, and again, this is particularly on the dry tropic side. Costa Rica is divided by mountains down the middle, and the prevailing winds are out of the east instead of the west as they are here. And so the western side of the country is actually much drier because of the rain shadow of the mountains. And it's called the dry tropical forest, and it's very, very different than the wet tropics that we think of. And so these are birds of the dry tropics in particular, and you'll hear them going through the woods and scratching just like turkeys do as well. Another one that we'll find actually in the highlands, but it's a turkey-sized bird, is called the guan. Guan. And they often found up in trees, but they will scratch on the ground as well. There are a number of there are several species of guans throughout the tropics around the world. The black one is the most common in Central America. Some of the hawks involve lots and lots of different species. The black hawk is pretty common. They're about the size of our red tails, maybe a little smaller, but not much. Um, and found in forested areas, kind of in the middle level of the middle level of elevations in particular. Roadside hawk is often found, as you might imagine, on the roadside with lots of other species. You drive along, you see a hawk on the roadside, and it is in fact very often a roadside hawk, not just because it's on the roadside, because that's where they hunt quite frequently. This is a bird about the size of between a sharpshin and a Cooper's hawk in size, and has that long tail, short wings, and is quite adept at as other accipiters are. One of the most spectacular ones to find is often the laughing falcon because of that wonderful mask they have there across their looks like a mask across their like the Lone Ranger. But they hunt in open country in the dry tropics as well. And caracaras, this happens to be the yellow-headed caracara. There's also the crested caracara. But these are you'll notice their feet seem to be very flat, and that's because they spend most of their time on the ground. Unlike other raptors that have big talons and strong tendons that allow them to capture prey, these spend most of their time on the ground. They spend a lot of time chasing after, while running after snakes and lizards. Again, in both the dry tropics and the wet tropics, but especially in the dry tropics as well. Black vultures, if you've been to Florida at all, black vultures are very common throughout the tropics and are the cleanup crew. Here's a dead caiman. No idea what killed it, but they happen to, these black vultures are making quick work of it. They can get down even through those that heavy armor on caimans. And the next day we came back, and this caiman was pretty well gone, and there were a lot of black vultures around it. This is one of the things, the groups, of course, that is typical of the tropics, and we don't have anymore, at least, we don't have equivalents here in the U.S. and that's the group of parrots and macaws. These are just spectacular, and they are hole nesters, but they are birds of tropical forests that are very mature. And wherever you have tropical forests that have been harvested, the large trees have been harvested, you won't find macaws. You got to have hollow trees for them. That means big old growth trees that they can get inside and nest. This happens to be the scarlet. Another species that is found in Costa Rica is a great green macaw, and there are a number of macaws all throughout the tropics. I was able to take a group uh, to Peru, and after we did the Machu Picchu and the Sacred Valley, we kept going east and went down into river basins on the eastern side of the country and went up a river basin, and we watched 10 species from a blind, watched 10 species of macaws and parrots and parakeets feed on a clay lick. There were often hundreds of birds on the clay lick in front of us all at once, and it allows them, the clay lick is sort of like taking Pepto-Bismol because it allows them to consume these tropical fruits that are often very acidic, and it allows it's like I say, it mellows out their stomach a little bit, and so the clay licks are very important to them as a species group. Lots of owls, believe it or not. The little guy on the right is about the size of a saw-whet, not quite the size of a screech, kind of between ferruginous pygmy owl and crested owl. Both of these, well, no, the pygmy owl was taken in the dry tropics. The crested pygmy owl is in the wet tropics on the Caribbean side of the mountains. Um, Very, very secretive, all of them, and you have to be out at night to really see them with much luck at all. One of my favorites is one that many people go to the tropics to see, and that's the great potu. This is a member of the same family as nightjars and whippoorwills. It is an insect eater, but it eats very big butterflies and even bats. Flies only at night, but during the daytime you'll often see them and mistake them for a stump because they just blend in so well and they stay absolutely quiet on the trees. So they're really an amazing bird to see, but it's fun. This bird is oh criminy, with its tail is probably, let me think, almost 2 feet long, between 20 and 24 inches long, depending on the length of their tail. This happens to be the great potu. There are some other species as well. Now the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are just, one of those birds of the tropics that are just so fun to see. And so many of the lodges all throughout the tropics have hummingbird feeders up. And a lot of people worry about, oh, gee, if you put bird feeders up, you're going to spread disease and everything. And that may or may not be true because there's no research that shows disease spread among tropical birds because of feeders. And yet they passed some laws saying, oh, you can't put up feeders at tourist sites because it spreads disease. The only disease so far we have here that spreads at our feeders is the crust eye encrustations that you're found in uh, uh, house finches. It's caused by it's a mycoplasma disease and does spread because they congregate at feeders. But in the tropics, there's nothing like that at all, and yet to me, it's counterproductive because people go to Costa Rica and go to these places uh, because they get to see birds and having them at feeders, honey creepers, and all kinds of things really helps people come back again and again and again. And if you're going to save that forest and save the habitat for these birds, tropical tourism is extremely important. And this is a little guy, one of the smallest hummingbirds in Costa Rica. It's called the scintillant. So this is an extreme close-up of a male, and that gorget there during the breeding season turns a sparkly reddish color. There's another one common in the highlands is this white-throated mountain gem, and mountain all the hummingbirds and feeders. If you have multiple feeders up, you're probably used to hummingbirds coming in. It seems like, oh, they're fighting all the time, and yeah, they are, but they still get plenty of feed that way, and they don't depend just on your feeder. In fact, during the breeding season, they need not only the energy they get from the sugar water solutions, but they need insects for protein. Like most birds that eat other things as adults, in order for young birds um, uh, to have enough protein to grow in a very short period of time, they have to have high levels of protein, and you can't get that from sugar water. You get that from insects and spiders and other invertebrates. And so they spend a lot of their time searching for those sorts of things in addition to the sugar water. Another one that is one of my favorites is the mangrove hummingbird. We were lucky enough to find them on the nest, and just like here, you can see this nest is decorated with lichens on the outside, and it's tied to that branch, just as our ruby-throated hummingbirds do, by using spider webs. They collect spider webs. I have a lot of brush piles around on my property, and we've commonly watched hummingbirds go into these brush piles, and they pull out long strands of spider webs and use that to wrap their nest in and to attach it to the tree branches. And then they decorate the outside so it's seems to be very well camouflaged. The mangrove hummingbird does this very same thing. This is one of my favorites, and these are quite common in the highlands and in Costa Rica. This is obviously a male, a green violet ear. Talk about well named. This is exactly a very green hummingbird, and has these violet feather tufts, ear tufts that it spreads when it feels the need to attract a female or scare off another male. Among another group of tropical birds are the trogons. Trogons are primarily, you see that little short beak there on this one, they're primarily fruit eaters and are extremely important for spreading fruits throughout tropical forests. The black-throated trogon is quite common, and they'll sit for long periods of time in one place, and often it is in a fruit growing area. So they take in the piece of fruit, and they're within their essentially a crop. They are digesting off the soft tissue, and then they may roost someplace else, and they'll regurgitate those seeds, particularly if they're large seeds. Things like this next one, this other trogon that is so spectacular, the resplendent quetzal. That tail, by the way, can be up to 2 feet long. So when you see these male quetzals, they're just magnificent and resplendent, obviously. But they'll often these guys specialize on aguacate, which is avocado, wild avocados, which are about the size, have seeds about the size of the end of your thumb. And so they'll take in that, digest off the flesh from the outside, and then regurgitate, much like owls and hawks pellet. They're spitting out these seeds, and they're spreading them throughout the tropical woodlands, and really, really an important seed disperser. All the trogons do that. The males, by the way, these are whole trogons are whole nesters, but you can see with a beak like that, they can't excavate their own holes very well. They will sometimes take over a woodpecker's hole or something like that, but most often they will excavate them, but in very rotten trees. Often a palm tree is standing in the forest, and the quetzal is a bird of the highlands in particular, and these old palm trees are standing there for a couple of years before they fall down, and the quetzals are able to get through that rotten wood, form their nest inside, and when the male is overnight, often incubates the eggs, the feathers stick out the front of the hole. They wind around behind them and stick out the front of the nest hole. So it's not easy to find them, but when you do find them, you'll often see these two feathers sticking out the front of the hole. They're quite fantastic. It's one of the birds. The trogons are one of the groups of birds that people often go to Costa Rica, and it is one of the key birds they want to see when they go. Another group that is closely related to our kingfishers are the motmots, and you'll often hear them during the day. They have that mot 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 mot. You'll hear that sort of mumble all throughout the tropical forests, and this is two species here. Both of them, just like our kingfishers, will excavate the holes in mud banks that they nest in. And these holes will often go back 2 meters or more back into these mud banks. So they will excavate them during the wet season. They come back in the dry season then with the hole ready made. It would be impossible for them in those dry soils to be able to excavate that, but they can do it when the clay and that is wet. So they excavate these holes and come back in the dry season and lay eggs. You'll notice that little, particularly on both of them, but especially in the turquoise browed, you see that sort of racket on the edge of the feathers. And there have been a lot of graduate students that have put out papers about why they have those tails, because they don't begin that way. They do have a full feather. They do seem to break off and leave the racket at the end. There's some thought, some papers have said, oh, they do it when they're nervous and they twitch that back and forth. Other papers have said, oh no, they use that to attract insects. They're attracting insects. Neither is supported by anything I've seen in the field. I think it's just a nervous habit. And but the reason for the rackets remains pretty much a biological mystery, although there's lots of speculation. They do have kingfishers, lots of them, bigger than ours and smaller. In fact, if you may have seen this one if you birded along the Gulf Coast at all, this is the American pygmy kingfisher, and they're the size of a sparrow, and they're just wonderful little birds. They have at that size, they have the same attitude that a belted kingfisher has at full size. They're a kingfisher, and by golly, they let you know. And they're a wonderful little bird of the tropics that we see often on the river bottoms. And this was back in the mangroves when I took this photo, in fact. Another group that people often love to see are the toucans. There are a number of them in the tropics. You'll hear them before you see them because they're quite raucous. And this chestnut mandible toucan, or also now called yellow-throated, that's one of the things that always irritates me is that in birds, as you probably know, the common names are official common names. In plants, it's every country for itself, every person for themselves. Growing up, we had a plant we called inks. You might know it as Tradescantia, criminy sakes, I can't think of the other common name, but it is common on our prairies, and plants don't have official common names; they have official scientific names. Birds, on the other hand, have official common names, and they keep changing the names. Every time you get a new cohort of young ornithologists that comes in and they decide to change the name. They change the name of the scarlet-rumped tanager, which was a perfect description of what the bird is. It had a bright red, bright scarlet rump. And they changed it to the Passerini's tanager, which makes no sense and is really hard to remember for people. So the same thing has happened with this chestnut mandible. Do you notice the chestnut mandible on this bird's beak? They've changed it now to yellow-throated, and makes no sense to me, but okay. There are other toucans that have other species that have yellow throats, by the way. And the emerald toucanet. This is a member of the toucan family. Toucans, both of these use their bills. They are fruit-eating birds for sure, but they are also predators, and they will use that beak to reach into the nests of other birds and eat the nestlings. So they're a beautiful bird, but they're a predator as well. This is a little emerald toucanet. They're about maybe 10 inches high. Beautiful toucanet. Number of woodpeckers. You've probably seen these. This is one of the most widespread woodpeckers in all from temperate forests all the way down into the tropics. Acorn woodpeckers. They're fond of acorns, and any place there are oaks. This happens to be in an upland area of Costa Rica, way up in the mountains, about 9,000 feet, in fact. And there are oaks up there, robles, and those produce acorns, of course. And the acorn woodpeckers take them and put them into holes throughout the trees, just as they do in the U.S. Another very large woodpecker, and one that I think could easily be mistaken for the ivory-billed if it got off course, is a pale-billed woodpecker. This is a same size as a pileated that we have here, but you can see that bright red head, and it has a beautiful white crisscross markings on the back. Among the many birds in the understory, and this is probably of the 200 birds I haven't seen in Costa Rica, probably a good third of them are that deep forest. You got to crawl around and sit and wait for them to come to you. These are antbirds, or you go in search of a moving colony of army ants, and you'll find antbirds all around them. They're waiting for the ants. They don't eat the ants. They're waiting for the ants to scare up something else that they can go and eat. So there are antbirds and ant pitas and lots of that bunch. Very hard to photograph because it's always dark where they are. But one of the key things is that beautiful blue around the eyes, the blue areas around the eyes that seem to be only found in those antbird groups. Lots and lots of different kinds of flycatchers, as you might imagine, because there are lots of insects to eat. The largest is the great kiskadee, and one of the smallest is a social flycatcher as well. All have yellow fronts and those broad flycatcher beaks that are typical of our flycatchers as well. The kiskadee is called that because you hear them call kiskadee, 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 kiskadee. Very noisy and almost like we see during the winter months. If we go to Costa Rica, we'll find great crested flycatchers, and you know how loud they can be in the summer here. But they are very, very loud in proclaiming their presence and their territories. Lots of little wrens. This happens to be a big wren, about the size of, if you've been in the Southwest, cactus wren size, and behaves very much like a cactus wren. In fact, rufous-naped wren. Um, Lots of thrushes, very much like our robins. This happens to be a mountain thrush. You can see this is at a feeder. It doesn't look much like our feeders. They feed a lot of fruit. They'll take at many of the lodges. they put out fruit. They'll put out watermelon. They'll put out um, criminy sakes, can't think of the name of this fruit, but we eat them. Uh, they'll put out mangoes. They'll put out rotten bananas, all kinds of things, and birds come to them in droves. On the dry tropic side, we'll find white-throated magpie jays. This is a very large jay, bigger than our, um, not so much body-wise bigger than our blue jays, but the long tail and that little top knot on the top of their head makes them look larger than our blue jays. Lots of little warblers. This one happens to be a collared redstart, and like redstarts here, they don't stop for long and are constantly on the move, finding insects and berries in the trees. One of my favorites in the highlands are the group of chlorophonias, little tiny finches, brightly colored, and this is actually the photo I use on my face, the top of my Facebook page has this golden brown chlorophonia, and very high pitched. I've lost a lot of my hearing years ago when I turned 50. I think my hearing started going, and I lost all the warblers that I used to be able to hear. And even with good hearing aids, I have they have to be really close before I can hear them. Same is true with chlorophonias, but they have that very high pitched but beautiful songs. And my wife tells me they're beautiful songs anyway. So um, among the larger birds that is in related to it's in the family of orioles are Monozoonus oropendulas. There are a couple of different species of oropendulas, several species. They all are colonial breeders, and you'll see often their nests. And oropendulas have very long nests, like our orioles do, but they're as much as a meter long, and the entrances to them depends on the species. Some have a top entrance, some have a side entrance with a door, so that the door they have to open the flap before they can get inside. They've figured out how to do that. Uh, Lots of little honey creepers. This is a male red-legged honey creeper. Wonder why it's called red-legged honey creeper. Doesn't that make sense? It's just makes a it's a great name for them. You can see it's feeding on rotten banana there on her feeder. The bird to the left that you can just see the tail end of is a blue-gray tanager. Often these are all at feeders, in fact. Crimson collared tanager, silver-throated tanager. My wife and I had been to Costa Rica a number of times, me in particular, and we had we probably, I think, uh, throughout most of the tropics, I had seen about 24 species of hummingbirds and about 28 species of tanagers. And then we went to Ecuador and we started birding at 2,000 feet, at 4,000 feet, at 6,000 feet, and at 8,000 feet. It's a completely different suite of birds at those different levels. And we saw as many new tanagers and new hummingbirds as we had seen all over the rest of the tropics. So it's an amazing place to go and bird if you ever get a chance. It's quite wonderful. Lots of different tanagers filling those little tiny niches that are available in the tropics. There are other critters as well, from the sloths on the left and peccaries down below to blue jeans, tree frogs, to the various lizards that are found, spiders. In the upper right, those are the dung beetles, crabs along the shore, and there's another clear-winged butterfly in the lower right. And among my favorites, of course, are this large. These are pig-sized mammals. This is the largest um, rodent in the Americas. These are capybaras. Capybaras are wonderful prey for jaguars. And in Brazil, if you go to the Pantanal, it's the largest freshwater wetland in the world. Been there several times, taken groups a couple of times, and you'll see jaguars along the rivers because that's where the capybaras and the caimans are, and those are their two primary species. This is the largest subspecies of jaguar in the world because they don't have to climb. They can climb trees, but they don't have to because their prey is right on the ground, and they go in the water to get both capybaras and to capture caimans. You think of a cat going in the water, they don't care at all. They love the water. So in the Pantanal, in this big wetland, they love it. Big sloth here, sleeping away the daytime, and it this particular one, no, it doesn't have a young. I've got some other photos that have young with them, and very interesting critter. When we came across one on a rainy day one time that had fallen out of a tree, and it was running across the road very rapidly, running across the road. It's as fast as a sloth can move, and trying to get to the other side. So we fortunately stopped and just watched it cross. Um, Lots of monkeys in Costa Rica. There are three species. This happens to be the howler monkey. There are also carablancas, the capuchins, white-faced capuchins, and little squirrel monkeys as well, and spider monkeys. I'm sorry, four species. Spider monkeys, which long-armed run through the trees, literally. This is howler monkeys. Often are awakened in the tropics by these guys, by the males early in the morning going, advertising their presence and letting other males know that they're around. There are in some of the rivers. This is one of the things. It's one of the reasons you just don't go swim wherever you want to. Uh, the caimans are sort of a small alligator and really not dangerous. Kids swim around them all the time in tropical rivers. But these guys you don't mess around with. These are tropical crocs. And crocodiles in some of the rivers, particularly on the dry tropic side, the Tarcoles River region west of the west coast of Costa Rica, uh, these get up to 4 meters long. They're big and they're quite deadly. So you don't swim in those rivers at all. Wonderful if you've been to any of the butterfly gardens in the state. You will see these often being one of the featured butterflies because they're raised for the butterfly trade. But this is in the wild. You can see these blue morphos, and they have this incredible iridescence on their wings. So butterflies, that's a whole other thing we could get into here is butterflies. This is a caiman. Uh, Looks ferocious, but it's really it's really a fish eater. It's not really interested in humans at all. Jaguar, again, we've seen that this is actually from a boat, maybe taken maybe 30 feet away. So you can, when you're in the river, as long as you're quiet, sit in the boat, they will sit there and you can photograph them for a long time. It's quite an amazing thing to watch. So. This was actually in another part of the out of the tropics, but this is the cat with the largest range in the world. These range from Alaska all the way to the southern tip of South America, and that's the puma, also known as mountain lion, cougar, catamount. There are lots of common names for them, but this was taken in Torres del Paine National Park down in the tip of South America. So while I have not seen them in the tropics, they're there. We see their tracks. They do not, they're particularly in the mountains, whereas the jaguars tend to be more in the lowland tropics. So they don't cross paths very often. So we've seen some magnificent sights as well. From Arenal volcanoes. That land bridge is very active volcanically. It's still on the the Ring of Fire of the Pacific, and so they're very active volcanoes all throughout the tropics of the whole world. In fact, churches and the Amazon River here in the lower right with the Amazon rainforest. Wonderful, wonderful, incredible plants that grow fruit that we're not even vaguely familiar with. It's always fun. I always took my groups to one of the markets. And it was a market in Cartago that I would take them to, and a lot of the vendors got to know me. They knew I would bring students and older students as well. And so they'd give me this a new fruit, and they'd say, "Here, taste this one." So we'd learn all about the various tropical fruits that we never see here in the United States. It's great fun to try them out and see how you like them. I've enjoyed showing the tropics to lots of different groups over the years. I've been to Costa Rica probably, oh, I've taught teacher workshops down there. I've taken student groups for many, many years. I've probably been there 30 or 35 times now, and so it's like a home away from home. And it always surprises me. I'm always seeing new things. And that's the thing about the tropics. The tropics have such diversity, have such complex food webs, that there's always something new to discover and to see in the tropics. My wife has been my partner in many of these and has supported me all throughout the years in doing crazy things and going places that we just went to Antarctica, to do crazy things. So what have I learned? I think a number. This is one way to sum it up for me, and it's that people need wild places, but they also need the natural resources that wild things provide for life and for livelihoods. So we try to solve this conflict um, uh, between agriculture, for example, and preservation and conservation with a whole lot of different ways. Education, and there are some creative ways of solving it. We tried for a number of years when we were exporting temperate zone agriculture into the tropics, and we found it didn't work because they don't have a thing called winter. Winter is, from an agricultural standpoint, is our friend. It kills off insects and diseases and weed seeds, and it kills off all kinds of things. That doesn't happen in the tropics. So you can't take the agriculture we have here and place it into the tropics and be successful. So if we're going to, they've come up, folks in the tropics have come up with lots of creative ways to solve those conflicts between producing, making a livelihood and making a life, and conservation. And I think we can learn a lot from each other. They have found ways that are not the same ways that we save wild places and wild things here, but we can learn a lot from each other. Tropical forests provide all sorts of benefits for us. The estimate is the most recent estimate that I've seen is $125 trillion in ecosystem services for the planet, including carbon storage and oxygen. They're the lungs of the earth for us. All those sorts of things. If we put them in economic value, $125 trillion in ecosystem services for us. That's incredible, and it's all free. Um, uh, they are the lungs of the earth. They provide, if we allow them to, they provide those biological, those genetic options for future generations, for unknown problems that we don't even can't even imagine now. So they're wild places, I think, for an unknown wild future. So we need to make sure that they continue to exist in as many places around the planet as we can. I was fortunate in 2006, just a couple of years before I retired, to be an invited visiting scholar to another tropical place, subtropical place, in Taiwan, and spent a lot of time speaking there around the country in national parks and universities, and learning about the solutions that they found. This is a very small place, a small island, not even half the size of the state of Iowa, and they are food self-sufficient, and they have over a third of their land in permanent protection in parks. So somehow, and they have 8 times as many people. So we have 3 million folks, or 3.3 million in Iowa. They have 24, 25 million, and they're feeding them. They're food self-sufficient. Yes, they do use the sea, no question about it, but they also grow things in very intense plots, and they still preserve a third of their land. That to me, in a tropical place, that to me says, boy, we've got a lot to learn, what we can do. E.O. Wilson, a famous biologist, ecologist from Harvard, said that in his biophilia hypothesis that we're human in good part because of the particular way we affiliate with other organisms, other wild critters. They are the matrix in which the human mind originated and is permanently rooted. So he says we're linked to wild places and wild things. Rachel Carson knew it. For the child, it's not half so important to know as to feel. And the seeds of the impressions of the senses, the fertile soils in which the seeds must grow. Lots of recent research on life path research indicates that childhood participation with wild nature has a positive relationship with adult environmental attitudes and behaviors. And I think this is important because if we're going to save wild places like tropical rainforests, we've got to have adults who make decisions with both feeling and understanding, intellectual understanding behind them. My own research with farmers and others, landowners, says that their childhood experiences, their wild experiences, hunting and fishing and gardening, were absolutely necessary to have adults who were positively inclined towards wild places and wild things. So why should we care? Because we need these wild places and wild things, I think, as much or probably more than they need us. They've done pretty well without us for lots of years. Otto Leopold said it best, I think, when he said, I'm glad I shall never be young without wild places to be young in. Of what avail, of what use are 40 freedoms without a blank spot on the map? So tropical forests are some of those blank spots that we often take for granted because we don't live in them. And I think they have much to teach us if we're open to it. There's my contact information again. If you didn't, I didn't see anybody ask any questions. So please open your mics and be open to any questions or comments or inappropriate remarks, whatever. So go
If
ahead.
you have a question, unmute yourself and go right ahead and ask.
No questions. No
I
comment.
will ask a comment. So, how safe is the tropical rainforest?
Depends on where you are. Um,
Okay.
and it depends on the the politics of the country. When Lula was and is now president again in Brazil, he has put in law, has gotten laws passed and is actually enforcing them so that we don't have nearly as much clearing of tropical rainforest to grow more soybeans in Brazil. His predecessor, however, who was a protege of our current president, um, uh, was known for encouraging landowners to violate everything and to chop down more rainforest to grow more soybeans so that they could export it to Europe. Um, it a lot depends. So I think in Costa Rica, it's one of the most stable democracies in the world. Interestingly enough, in 1948, they had a brief 2 week long sort of revolution. A guy didn't want to leave the presidency, and the new president, Figueres, came in 1948, and they wrote a new constitution. They eliminated the military. They said, we're not going to have any more wars because we're eliminating the military. And that's what they did. And so Costa Rica has put all of their gross national product into universal education, universal medical care, making sure that even when they have workers coming in from Nicaragua or other Central American countries that are having economic problems, uh, they when they have those workers, they are covered by basic medical care as well. So they haven't spent all, unlike a lot of other countries in Central America, they haven't spent all their GNP on war and arms and armies. And it's made a huge difference in Costa Rica. Up to nearly a quarter of their land is in some sort of protection. That's pretty amazing. They also have a very, very viable economy based on tourism, and as long as tourists keep coming, and there was about a year's period during COVID where they didn't, and a lot of friends of mine who had family businesses, they went out of business because they couldn't survive a year, a full year without tourism, and it was a shame to see. But we sent them as much money as we could, to help them through, feed their families and things. So, but yeah, it depends where you are. I think in Taiwan, I think the forests are pretty safe for now. In Ecuador and other countries in South America, it depends on. Unfortunately, I think it depends on the politics,
Yeah.
not only of what happens there, but what happens here, because we have a huge influence on their political systems, like it or not, good or bad. So,
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
my
Are
pleasure.
there any other questions?
Peter, did you have a question?
Uh, does China have national parks?
Yeah, they do. It's interesting because China, as you know, we see all the peopled areas. I haven't traveled a lot in China. I've been to China, but I haven't mainly in the Beijing area. Went there for a conference and did some traveling afterwards, but not extensively at all. So they do have national parks, and they have uh, again they don't necessarily do it the same way we do it at a national park, where we acquire them by the federal government. But because of the kind of government they have, essentially any place they want to save, they save. And any place that they want to have people, they have people. So, but yeah, they do have parks. And when I was in Taiwan, I was just amazed at their national parks. It was phenomenal. Yamingshang National Park, right outside of Taipei. It's a beautiful. It's has a lot of hot springs and a lot of that sort of thermal activity going on there, which is one of the reasons they don't produce food there. Uh, but you can go there just outside of Taipei, and and there's also um, uh, the Jade National Park, a huge mountain outside. Um, so there, but where they are producing food, it's very intense food, but in small plots. They don't have these fields that are like ours, where you have, a couple of thousand acres under one person's management. they have small plots that are under lots of people's management, so it employs lots of people. So
Okay, I am going to stop recording, but we can continue with questions.
sure, that's fine.